It is the Word of God, brethren, to which we give our attention. Peter said, by his word, the present heaven and earth are being reserved for fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. Do not let this one fact escape your notice. Now, that's pretty plain language, isn't it? Yeah. It needs no interpretation or definition. Do not let this fact escape your notice, beloved. He's speaking or writing to those for whom he has an affection, because they have regard for the Word of God. Now we know, Brother Bob said this in several different ways, Noah had nothing but the Word of God. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had no signs, he had no wonders, nothing to prove what he had been spoken, to use the language of people who say, show us a sign. Show us a sign. We want proof. We want proof. Well, God has given generations of evidence or proof, hasn't he? Yeah. And the reality is no one was asking until he gave it. Were they? No one was asking until he gave it. And the only ones who asked for the proof were the ones who didn't believe. With the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. The Lord is not slow about his promise. That's what we're really talking about here. Jesus is revealing God's agenda. And it's contained in his promises. The heavens and the earth belong to him. All of humanity belongs to him. He has done, he is doing, and he will do according to his will and his purpose, despite what educated people, governors, kings, the tycoons of the economy may think. He will do his will. He's shown it again and again and again and again. I loved this phrase, this statement, Brother Bob. We are living in the days of the Son of Man. That's great, greatly comforting. If we did not have that, what would we do? Like, considering the nonsense and the chaos that's going on around us, the fear, the emptiness. It's not surprising to me, some of the folk that we have to deal with at work that come out there and you see their lives are just a shell. Both young and old. Some just 18, 19 years old and their life is just a shell. And others in their 50s and 60s, their life is just a shell. It's just a wreck. If we didn't have this hope, that could be any one of us. If we didn't have this hope. But see, it's not, because we have these promises. Because we look for this word. We have the same thing as Noah, the word of God, his promise that he is keeping the present heavens and earth reserved for fire. Now, some of us have been scoffed at and laughed at when we say those words. I just recently. And I say them over and over and over again to some of the folk that I speak to. And I'm laughed at, snickered at under their breath. Well, you all know I don't care. I don't care at all. Because I'm delivering the Word of God. These that Peter is speaking about here, they were snickering too. Where's the promise of his coming? They would say. Where's the promise? They would snicker. You know, oh, that Peter, he's never been to school, has he? He's never been to school. He's just He's just an old boy, good old boy, country boy, you know. We know that. You ever visit that little town he came from? Boy, they're a bunch of hicks, I tell you. That's what they would say about him as they scoffed about his preaching. Now, they might be more reserved when Paul spoke. And he said, the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel. They wouldn't say it so openly when Paul declared those words. But the end result would be the same. They might even say, your great learning has driven you mad. See, all kinds of reactions. In our earlier lesson this morning, when we were talking about the line upon line statement from Isaiah, made me think of Jesus' explanation of his telling the parables in Matthew 13, where he quoted from Isaiah 6 about the hearers. And it's the same curse. That's what it is. It's a curse. It's a sentence. It's a revelation of the sentence of God on those who refuse his truth. The revelation of his truth. Brethren, we have not refused it. We are drawn to it because we are firmly convinced that God has revealed himself to us. And we are drawn to him. And he has revealed that he is drawn to us because we're drawn to him. We love his truth, and he loves those who love his truth, who believe the things that he has said, in whatever form he has delivered them. And we have not been content. We have not been content with crumbs, with veiled sayings. We've not been content with that. We want more. And so we come to him and say, Lord, what do you mean? We meet together and we press in. We take the kingdom by force to have these things because we know that he's willing to make them known as much as he's spoken about them, as much as he's said about them. And we know these are very large words, as several have already said this morning about how brief, despite how brief these sayings are, we know that there's a lot of truth contained in them. As the Lord's saying there in the reference that we call Genesis 3:15, a lot of truth contained there, isn't there? In just those 15 or 18 words, something like that. The whole history of redemption is contained in those words. And a revelation of things unseen, a conflict unseen by human eye, unrecorded by human historians, contained in those words. And in like manner, there's this kind of truth contained. I very much appreciated the brother's words here about the unbelievers did not know. They didn't even know. In Sodom or in Noah's generation. They had no clue. Of course, they weren't interested either because God had already searched their hearts, hadn't he? He came down, he sent his messengers there to Sodom, and how were they received? In the basest way, in a manner that we'll not even speak about in detail. They were received. They had to blind them. God's messengers had to blind them to stop their craven attacks upon them. Messengers from the presence of God. This is how the flesh acted toward them. So blinded were they that these messengers made it a reality in the flesh, didn't they? They were fleshly minded, so these messengers gave them in their flesh what they were revealing about themselves. They thought they were just men. Lot knew different, didn't he? He knew different.